People are buying legal weed in illegal states. How? Well, Andrew's going to explain that to us. And have you ever wondered why you get the munchies from weed? Jay is going to give us the science behind that. Also, Andrew has an important political announcement. Can't wait to hear what that. I don't even know what that is.
No, we don't know. It's a surprise.
Plus, Jay has his cannabis quick hits and some more weed trivia. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to VoteProPot-Cast. I'm Phil Adams here with Andrew McCready's and Jay Britton, my two bestest buds and weed partners. How's everybody today?
Doing great. Doing good.
All right, then. All right,
back in the swing.
I got a complaint. I've talked to a lot of people. Apparently, vape cartridge batteries are not very reliable.
No.
People are saying they're buying them and they're dying. I know I've had so many die on me over the years.
Yeah, they don't last very long.
So how many recharges do you get from a
it depends. Some pens, I remember you could charge them. You have to charge them like once a day. Some of them, I used to have this pen. Plug it in like once a week. It lasted forever.
Yeah. I got one of those snails that you gave me, or one like it.
Yeah, I gave one for Christmas.
And I love that thing. It's perfect. I can get a lot of charge out of one charge. I can, run it for several days.
I was talking to a bud tender the other day, and we were both bitching about it anyway.
Anyway, so our first order of business, Jay has some very important news from the Food and Drug Administration. What do you got, Jay?
Well, yeah, the big story this week, of course, is the FDA has recommended reclassifying pot under Schedule 3 instead of Schedule 1. So, when you hear that, and that's all you're really hearing, what are the implications of that? And what's the effect on this, cannabis landscape? And what are the implications for the cannabis industry? These are all the questions I had. How does it affect legalization?
The first question I have, and you can incorporate that, is from a recommendation, where do you go from there? How does this actually happen?
I'm looking at an article here by Benjamin Adams with High Times yesterday. Friday, officials from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration said in documentation that they put together, I think back in October, that they support reclassification of cannabis as a Schedule 3 in lieu of Schedule 1. What happens now is that recommendation goes to the
DEA?
Yeah. So the FDA makes the recommendation, but the DEA makes the determination.
That's the Drug Enforcement Administration.
Correct. And in the past, with other drugs in similar situations, they've always gone with the FDA's recommendation. That is, the DEA has always gone with the recommendation. The Schedule 3 drugs are, the issue here is they're still heavily regulated. It's like Tylenol 3, steroids, testosterone, ketamine. Those are the kind of drugs that are Schedule 3. So you still have to have a prescription, still has to be prescribed from a doctor. And many initially see this and say, well, this is bullshit. We want it to be descheduled. Think about it. Alcohol's not scheduled, Tobacco's not scheduled, and those are certainly every bit as dangerous, if not more so, than cannabis.
Sugar's not scheduled.
Absolutely.
Right. So the question really is, what effect is this going to have on the legalization movement? And I think the biggest boon comes, and we talked about this many times, the tax opportunities. Let's face it, almost all of the cannabis companies are struggling. It's difficult. And one of the main things is, we've talked about many times, the tax implications, right? Currently dealing with a Schedule 1 drug, you can't write off any of your expenses on your federal tax returns.
Right.
Due to what is that, IRS 280E is that form, So that's a huge, huge improvement, because now they're going to be able to write off these expenses. So it's going to have huge tax implications.
What about implications for banking?
Obviously, banking too is going to be another huge implication, because
banks are still refusing to do business with a lot of cannabis companies.
Yeah.
Now the question is, with banking, the SAFE Act is still out there making its way through Congress, through committees and so forth. That would really clean things up. But this does help in that regard, because it may be easier for banks to get involved with cannabis companies, be more liable to kind of lend money and so forth. But there's still that implication of it's a prescription drug. So there's still some trepidation for banks to get involved with businesses, But the tax thing is huge. The tax thing is tremendous because so much of their profits are diminished because they can't write off so many. I mean, things like their labor costs, their production costs, all those things can't be written off.
All of the things that any other business can write off.
Any other business can write off. The other probably big thing for business is the rescheduling will allow interstate commerce. So now you have this situation where, for example, you have two legal states next to each other. Maybe one is having trouble. They don't have enough product. The other has too much product. Well, they can't interchange. They can't sell to each other. It's ridiculous. Now they're going to be able to do that. Under Schedule 3, they'll be allowed, across state lines would be okay. So those are the probably biggest implications so far.
And also, if we're able to sell across state lines, we'll be able to really implement the whole appellation system. So we'll be able to go, well, I got a South Modesto County sour diesel from 2024.
Right,
like
the way vineyards do it.
Right. It's exactly how it's going to be done. But whereas of now, if it's grown indoors, it's there's no such thing as an appellation system.
Right.
But when the climate is an issue, so that's another benefit.
So I think in the long run, we talk about these companies and their stock and their profitability. And the biggest hindrance is probably the banking thing, which we talked about, and the tax thing, where, their bookkeeping is just a mess because they have so little opportunity to write things off that every other business can write off. So maybe this will really help the stock market with regard to cannabis companies and improve their bottom lines. We'll have to see, but it's a big move. I mean,
it's a potentially big move. I would point out that nothing has happened yet.
Right. That's right.
It's a recommendation.
It's a recommendation.
And we've heard these before. And, you mentioned the SAFE Act. The SAFE Act has been around in one form or another since 2016, I think.
Right. Yeah,
that's right. And it comes up and it gets inserted into every other bill. They can't get it past the finish line. No. I have learned to take I'll believe it when I see it approach.
Permission to be a skeptic?
Permission granted.
Here's what I say to that. And I don't want to sound political here, but a certain administration in power now is doing a lot to encourage young voters to vote for them because right now their poll numbers are in the toilet with young voters, which is, let's face it, President Biden cannot win this election without young voters. He can't. No. So he's offering to, pay off school loans and do all these things. This is another opportunity, I think, for him to get some young votes, is to go in front of the podium and say, I rescheduled cannabis.
Right. Well, it should be a no-brainer.
Is that too skeptical?
It really should be.
Well, guys, he's had years to approach this.
Right. But now's an election year, brother. That makes a big difference.
Well, this is not the first election year he's come up against,
Right.
True.
Well,
I don't know. I'm being the skeptic. It's a skeptic in me. His poll numbers are in the tank.
Well, actually, you're being the optimist. I'm being the skeptic.
Still may do it.
If depending on how you want to look at it, but
we'll follow it. We'll definitely stay on top of it, and we'll let folks know what's going on. But that's what we know so far, as best as I understand it, and I'm no expert.
So over the Christmas holiday, I was talking to Jay's son, who was visiting from Nashville, lives in Nashville, and he was saying that he goes to dispensaries down there and buys THCA products.
THCA. Well, wait a minute. Tennessee is an illegal state.
Illegal state, right. So, we were talking about this. And so anyway, I've done some research on this, and I even talked to Jay's son about this. Here's what happened. In 2018 was the Farm Bill.
Right.
As soon as they did that, they said marijuana is illegal, but hemp's legal. Now, the difference they're saying is, it has to have less than 0.3% THC level. And now, when they're saying THC, they're saying the psychoactive THC, which is THC is what is psychoactive.
Right.
Now, naturally in the cannabis plant, you have THCA. It's a THC with an acid molecule attached to it.
All right.
Now, when you drop that acid molecule and turn it into just THC, that's when it turns psychoactive. Now, you do that by a process called decarboxylation. It's where it's heated to a point where it drops the acid molecule.
Uh-huh.
Now, that happens by either heating it, it happens by lighting it on fire, and it also happens by curing it, and letting it sit for months and months and let it...
Oh, really? Does it naturally?
Better living through chemistry.
Yeah, some people call it fermentation, but it's curing. It's like you're drying it out. Anyway, so what happened was a lot of people in different states started interpreting the Farm Bill differently. Imagine that. But in the meantime, they started legalizing cannabis, for medical and medicinal and recreational purposes across many states. So what has happened is if in states where there is no legal cannabis, people are saying that this THCA is hemp and I can sell it. Because the
THC level is below point.
Under the Farm Bill, because it has less than 0.3% THC.
Right.
Now, there's a lot of THCA, but not a lot of THC.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that's sort of the loophole that they're getting away with in some states. Now, to find out if this applies, you have to go on a state-by-state basis. Now, there's some states where THCA is illegal. Hands down, you can't.
Is that right? Okay.
Right. There's like 5 states on it. And then there's some other states. I'm sorry I don't have that written down right in front of me. I had it, but I lost it here. Anyway, but then there's some states where it's legal. So what's happening now, but also the 2018 Farm Bill ended in 2023.
Yeah, expired. Right.
It expired.
I did not know that.
So they're coming up with a new Farm Bill, and some people are saying, I guess the old one still applies until the new one, goes into effect.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And so they're saying some states are going to wise up, and they might change that. But as it is now, I think there's some probably some lawyers or other people in the industry that are advising people, who are getting in different businesses, that if in certain states and under certain conditions, you're doing this at your risk.
Right.
Because it could come down on you. Now, the other thing is what's happening is there's some government agencies that are saying to their people, whether it's the FBI, DEA, whoever, they're saying don't spend money, going after pot dealers. Don't spend money, on cannabis at all. It's just not worth it. Just concentrate on more important things. And what's happening is if the police find you and you have a bottle that says this is a hemp product and has less than 0.3% THC, the only way they're going to find that out, and if that's true, is if they test it.
Right.
Testing's very expensive, and they're not going to spend.
And they're not going to buy it. Right.
No prosecutor's going to spend the money to test it unless it's like a big case, and even then.
Right.
Sometimes we don't know if they do it because they're not testing, excuse me, officer, that's not marijuana. That's
Right. Well, the first thing that comes to my mind, Andrew, and I don't know if you found anything on this, but it's like these dispensaries or whatever they are, head shops that are selling this. Is it tested before they sell it? I'm surprised the state, especially a state like, in this case, we've gotten letters or emails from a few different listeners who asked this question, which is why Andrew's taking it up. Specifically, Texas, Tennessee. I'm surprised that in illegal states where you have these conservative politicians who are so anti-cannabis, that they allow this to happen for these shops to be just open on the street that advertise we're selling and I've seen the ads when I go down to Tennessee and I go down there and visit my son sometimes, and you see the ads and it's like, hey, we have the best weed in town. Seriously.
So is it a good quality weed that your son is getting, Jay? What does he say about it? Is it?
He says it's fine.
Is it?
It's fine. It does the job. I mean, it's like Andrew's saying. It's once you once you light it, and it's
It
no longer
becomes
THC,
THC.
it becomes THC, and it's 15, 18%. It's weed.
That's
But
the definition of a loophole.
We've gotten a few emails, like I said, people saying, I don't understand how I'm going down to my shop here in Texas or in Tennessee, and I'm buying, an eighth of weed, and I take it home, and it's great. And how is this happening? And I just can't believe the politicians let it go. But anyway, that's all it is.
Well,
basically,
I think
loophole, right?
it's like Andrew said, the police, these agencies, the politicians, they've got bigger fish to fry. And let's hope they continue to keep frying that bigger fish.
Right. Crazy.
And
it's
not
weird.
Waste their time and taxpayer money on people having a good time.
Right.
Now there might be some companies out there. I really wanted to say this before we close, that are selling CBD flower that is below 0.3% or below 1%.
Sure.
Depends on the state.
Sure.
Right.
THCA or THC 8 or 9 or all those. So I'm not saying all those companies are skirting the law.
Here's
right.
We really should get an expert on to talk about this, because we're certainly not. But if you go and you buy CBD, flower. I have tried CBD flower. And this is from a hemp plant. I do not get high.
No.
So what is this stuff they're selling in Nashville and Texas? It's not hemp. Can it be? I mean, I've smoked hemp buds and I don't get high. I've tried it just to see, it's supposed to be good for your health and stuff.
Yeah, well, I was working with right before the pandemic. I was working with a hemp company that it was just starting when the pandemic hit, and it went under because they couldn't do business.
Right.
Sure.
But I had some of that, and I gave you some of that flour, and it tastes all right.
It's
but
okay.
Yeah, it's almost like if you're in an illegal state, it's probably better than nothing.
I guess my question for an expert, if anybody knows, make a comment. What in the hell is it they're selling? Where are they getting it from? It's supposed to be from hemp, because that's all you can sell in these states. But how is hemp getting you high? I don't get that. So anyway, we'll
have to see.
Somebody knows.
We'll
Send
have
us
to
an
see.
email or something. Yep.
Now, here's another question. Why, and we've all experienced this, when you smoke weed, you got a little buzz on, first place you want to go is a kitchen. Get something to eat.
It's really bad for me.
It's the munchies, and it seems to be a fairly universal or a widespread phenomenon. What is going on there?
Well, there's a new study came out, and I'm looking at an article in a website called newatlas.com by a guy named Paul McGuire, dated a couple days ago. A study was published in the Journal of Scientific Reports by researchers from Washington State University, and they've uncovered one of the brain mechanisms that stimulated appetite in mice after they inhaled cannabis.
All right.
The researchers exposed mice to vaporized cannabis sativa plant matter that was 7.8% THC and 0.5% CBD to see how their brain cells...
Which is a lot if you're a mouse.
7.8. Sure.
That's some pretty chilled mice, I think.
Using a calcium imaging, which is similar to MRI,
right.
They found that the inhalation of cannabis activated a significant number of neurons in the metabasal hypothalamus, the MBH. Let's do that. The MBH, a part of the brain important to the control of food intake. When the mice entered a food-containing zone where a palatable high-fat diet was consistently offered, importantly, the number of active MBH neurons remained nearly constant when the mice were anticipating eating and while they were eating. When the mice were given cannabis, neurons come on that typically are not active. So they become active. And in the control test, when they weren't high, they didn't change from the time they were hungry to the time they were eating. It was the same. When they were high, they became active. So there's something important happening in the...
Were they eating more food?
Yes. They were consuming more food when they were high, and they were hungrier, more ravenous. The researchers say that findings could pave a way for therapeutics to treat appetite disorders like anorexia, obesity, and to improve the appetite of patients undergoing cancer treatment. So essentially this survey, these test results have proven that something in the part of the brain that is key to appetite and to eating is activated by cannabis.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, did the mice show a preference for like Cheetos and
yes,
and
pizza?
Well, that's cool. I mean, I've always wondered, and you figure that it was something like that when people are going through chemo, for example.
Yeah.
They lose their appetite, and they really, really need to eat. I imagine that that could help.
Well, absolutely. And doctors, I've known patients going through chemo and this was years and years ago. I mean, way before it was okay. The doctors pulled a patient aside that was a friend of mine, a friend of my family's, and said, look, we've tried all these drugs and they're not working for your appetite and your illness, your stomach disorders from chemo. And this woman was dying. She was dying of cancer. He said, off the record, can you see if you can get some cannabis and try it? And she did, and it worked. It worked. It was the only thing that worked.
Wow.
And there are many studies out there now that there is no better medicine for treatment of stomach disorders as a result of chemo than cannabis, as far as I know.
Wow.
It's the best remedy.
And guess what? 2 neighborhood kids that lady approached to get her weed.
Yes.
Let's see.
And how old were we, Andrew? 20? I mean, this was a long time ago.
We were in high school, weren't we?
We were in high school. It was a long time ago. So I'm just saying this was.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. So,
and you hooked her up.
I hooked her up.
Yeah.
Nice.
She knows who to go to in the neighborhood. Those 2 ragamuffins, Jay and Andrew, let's approach them. They'll know where to get some weed.
I don't know about you guys, but I've done that a few times over the years.
Done what? Got it for people, yeah. Who had chemo?
Got cannabis for chemo.
Wow.
It works.
And all I'm going to say is in one instance, someone involved in that whole thing worked wearing a badge.
Oh, really?
All right.
Okay.
Good to know.
Hey, it is what it is.
Someone he loved
more
than anything
was willing to risk his job. Yeah. Well,
good for him.
Man.
Well, I am very curious about Andrew's announcement. You got me all on pins and needles. You've got an important political announcement to make, and I'm just dying to hear what it is.
Well,
you're running for president.
We started VoteProPot in 2013.
Right.
So we're going on 11 years now.
Wow.
Damn. I think it's to the point now where we need to legalize it on a federal level. So what we need to do is get someone in the White House that's going to be in favor of legalization.
Be an advocate of it. Right.
Yes, be an advocate. So therefore, I'm announcing here that we're starting the VoteProPot Party. We're now a political group, the VoteProPot Party.
All right.
And,
wow. Can we start fundraising?
When's our convention, bro? Vegas?
Well, one of the things we're going to do is we're going to nominate someone for president.
All right.
All right.
Me?
We have to go through a primary process?
Too many skeletons in all 3 of our closets.
Well,
no,
you're
I'm
not going to run for
president.
But I have someone that I think would be a perfect person to run on a single issue campaign. That's it.
Oh, wow.
Platform.
Okay.
What's it? For legalization of weed, and that's it. Don't ask the candidate for anything other than legalization. Anything else is going to say.
Don't worry about the border, the economy, the crime.
Right. Foreign policy, none of that shit.
Nah.
We can solve that problem
Gives
by
a shit
legalizing
about
weed.
that stuff anyway.
We can solve all that by legalizing
all
weed.
problems can be solved by
legalizing
weed. And also, his cabinet, this person's cabinet, is going to have to help him do this. So the person who I think, and I'm going to try to contact this person, is Bert Kreischer.
The comedian?
Bert?
Yeah, the machine. The machine. I say we're going to nominate Bert Kreischer for president.
I'm not that familiar with him, but I've seen clips
the
of him.
ProPot party platform.
There we go. I like that. It's got a ring.
Has he announced his candidacy?
He doesn't know about it yet.
He doesn't know about it yet.
Probably
He doesn't know about
okay.
it yet. But I'm just going to assume that Tom Segura is going to be his running mate. So it's going to be Cresher Segura. Cresher Segura 24.
I'm sure they'll crush it.
Yes.
Oh, God.
Now,
I'm sorry.
What I'm thinking is
was bad.
Bert needs to get a good cabinet together. So, like for example, you'd want to, I mean, he has a lot of he knows all the comedians. He's world class. So I say, or someone like Jay Leno would be a good, the Secretary of Transportation. He knows cars.
Yeah, he's got a lot of motorcycles. Yeah.
Are you familiar with Brad Williams?
No.
This comedian who's brilliant. The guy is hysterically funny. He didn't play basketball growing up. He's vertically challenged. He's a dwarf. Anyway, but he's hysterically funny. But he's a good friend of Bert, so he'd be good as like the director of the Small Business Administration. Now we joke. Now one of the reasons I'm saying this is because those comedians can use this as material.
Okay,
but as far as the Small Business Administration,
you can, bro.
Well, wait a minute. Listen to me. That's a really important thing. I mean, we need in the legalization aspect of in legalizing cannabis nationally, we got to make sure the small businesses can operate, because right now it's like we can't turn it over to Marlboro and Anheuser-Busch, man. I mean, come on, we got to get and these are the kind of guys that can get up there and make some noise. They could use this as content for their acts. And so therefore, also, I think Bert should get Joe Rogan as his chief of staff. And Joe and Bert should go meet with Trump.
I want a cushy government gig. What about me? What am I going to do?
What are you qualified for?
Nothing.
I'm not qualified for a damn thing.
Either is anyone else in the government. Go ahead,
guys. All I'm saying is, those two guys, you get Rogan and someone as popular as Bert in to talk to Trump and say, you need to legalize, and here's why. And get Trump to say one more thing if you elect me, which looks like he's going to be. There's a good chance that he will.
Well, he's looking pretty strong now.
Right. Well, let's get him to commit to legalizing. And I think those two guys could do it.
All right.
Well, all right. So Bert Kreischer for president. VoteProPot is on the record. And, all
I care about is our convention.
The VoteProPot party.
Happy days are here again.
VoteProPot party.
The VoteProPot party. It's that time again for Jay's Cannabis Quick Hits.
Last week, we talked about canopy growth and that they had a planned $30 million private placement, right? Remember we talked about that?
Oh, yes.
Where they were going out and basically it wasn't a public offering of their stock. It was a private offering where they had a broker go find investors and they would raise $30 million to help infuse the company with cash. Well, guess what? 3 days after their announcement, Canopy and the institutional investors involved mutually agreed to cancel the agreement due to unforeseen third-party delays that impacted the deal's closure.
Now, what does that mean?
I'm reading this from the Green Market Report, which is excellent, by the way, Adam Jackson. So that's all we know. A spokesman for Canopy Growth confirmed that the agreement had been terminated, but declined to offer additional details. So that deal was squashed, and that's not good for...
it's not good for growth, canopy, or otherwise.
Right. The rescheduling thing, we constantly harp on these companies that are just getting demolished, economically and from the standpoint of profitability. And this FDA deal, the rescheduling, might have an impact on that. The other thing I had was a company, Tilray Company. I'm looking at Motley Fool, and they, Motley Fools, they do a stock report. And this is another huge company, Tilray. You're familiar with them?
Sure.
For the second quarter of Tilray's fiscal 2024, which ended in November of 2023, the company reported net revenues of $193.8 million, which was up 34% over the previous year. That's a lot. That's a nice
jump.
What's interesting to me, and I didn't know, is one of the reasons their profits or their revenues are up, not their profits. Their revenues are up is that they've been acquiring a lot of companies. And I did not know this, but in October, they acquired 8 beverage brands from the beer giant Anheuser-Busch. So they're diversifying into the alcohol business now.
All right.
So they're selling craft beers and doing pretty well with it. So the bottom line is, the question is Tilray a good stock to buy? According to Motley Fool, probably not right now. Their stock price is down 82% from 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So they're struggling with cash and they're struggling, but it's just another example of a big vertical cannabis company that's just fighting these regulations and all the issues that they have to go up against to make money, which is why, to me, Tilray's a great example of diversifying. So they're not just sticking with weed. They've gone out and bought a bunch of beer companies.
Yeah.
I mean, so that makes sense to me. I would think about buying them now at this price.
Do you think there's a reason they're getting into the in the beer company?
Yeah, well,
business?
They've said 2 reasons. One, to diversify, and they think that, selling weed products and selling alcohol is similar, and it is. I mean, it just is.
Yeah, they're in sort of the same space.
They're talking about buying, or eventually manufacturing THC drinks, of course.
Okay.
And of course, the problem with that is you can't combine the two. So they have to be separate. So for now, they're just like, we're going to sell beer, craft beers.
I wonder if you could package them together.
Well, that's an interesting thought.
But I wonder if you could. Would you drink a non-alcoholic beer that had THC in it instead of alcohol?
There's quite a few of them out there.
Yeah,
there's quite a few on the market, and people.
I've had some of those just alcoholic beers. They're not bad.
It's a THC malt beverage, is all it would be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think they're becoming more popular. I saw an article just the other day, and I can't think of where I saw it, about how the younger generation, the millennials and below, the numbers, the percentages of cannabis to alcohol are shifting. They're drinking far less, and many of them are using more THC. So that is a market that all the big verticals are looking at, is drinks.
Well, do you think some of that could be since cannabis has been legalized in so many states, that now people are being honest and saying, yeah, I smoke it, whereas before, a lot of people were going,
I would think so. That's got to be part of it. Yeah.
But I think the problem is the marketing is difficult, because it's still, most states that are legal don't have lounges, and you can't smoke in public. So what good? I mean, drink or consume
you can't advertise it.
So what good is it?
Yeah, restrictions
now,
on advertising.
Some jurisdictions, Vegas is going with lounges, and there are a few big cities that are, but it's still rare. San Francisco. But how do you market? When you're a huge company, how do you market a product like a THC drink, for example? Who's going to buy it to take it home, go to a dispensary, buy a 6-pack and go home and drink it watching TV? Most people want to go out to a bar and have a drink with their friends, socialize. And that's still very difficult to do. There are very few places to do it. So I think it's a struggle. And that's why I think Tilray is sticking with just craft beer for now, until that becomes more acceptable.
Until that's a thing.
But then when it does happen, guys, they have the
infrastructure.
They're ready.
Right.
They're ready.
They have the infrastructure. They're ready.
And they're going to learn a lot about the beverage industry.
They've got the branding. Yeah. They've got the marketing. They've got the retailers. So all they got to do is switch it over once it's legal. So I think it's a smart move on their part. And finally, I've got, just real quick, a list of the winners of the High Times Cannabis Cup of Massachusetts, which just happened Christmas Eve. So, every year they have it. They've done it for like 3 years in a row here. They're the High Times one. And I was just going to read these real quick, a couple of them, and see if you guys have these are in Massachusetts, of course, but some of these may be found elsewhere. On Indica Flower, third place was a company called Superflux's Grapple Pie. Second place was Lazy River Products Juicy J. And first place, I know, I love these names, man. I want to have that job.
Of course you like that one.
Making up names for weed.
Isn't that what your wife calls you?
I wish. The first place Indica Flower was Harbor House Collective Kosher Kush.
Kosher
names.
Kush.
You know, how do you get rid of the stigma when you have names like that for your product?
Yeah, who's
And then,
coming up with these names? Probably the same people that come up with the names with the color swatches on the paper.
Yeah. Right.
Morning Mist.
And we got sativa flower. Third place was Garden Remedies White Rainbow Special Stash. Second place was Lazy River Products Chimera. And the first place winner in sativa was Northeast Alternatives Tropicana Cherry. So those are the winners. Congratulations. They got a million categories, but I'm not going to go through all of them. But those are the sativa and the indica winners. So I'd love to try some of those.
Yeah.
Well, and finally, quick trivia questions for you, since you teased it in the beginning.
All right, let's hear some.
Got some real quick trivia questions here. Some of these are easier than others.
Folks,
First
play
question.
along at home.
Play along at home for sure. There's a dramedy series starring Mary Louise Parker as a widowed mother of two who starts selling cannabis to support her family. What was the name of the show?
Weeds.
Right, that's an easy one. Okay.
Easy.
In 2020, in the general election, what state governed by Doug Ducey voted to legalize recreational marijuana in a ballot proposition known as the Smart and Safe Act? You guys remember what state that was?
Smart and Safe Act.
Governor Ducey, the Smart and Safe Act.
Delaware. No? Okay.
No.
Andrew?
What year was it?
Oh, it's not legal in
2020.
Delaware. I forgot. 2020.
Yeah, I was going to say 2020.
I don't know.
Was it not Virginia? What was it?
Arizona. Remember? Governor Ducey in Arizona?
Yeah.
Okay.
Governor Ducey. Okay.
Andrew, you'll know this one. What highly flammable hydrocarbon solvent can be passed through an extraction tube filled with marijuana to produce a sticky liquid called honey oil?
Butane.
Right. Butane it is. And this one here.
In fact, a little trivia.
Yeah.
Butane is known to really produce the best oils of all different solvents.
Really?
When you do it right and you get all the solvent out at the end.
Yeah.
It's apparently, from what I understand.
Sounds dangerous.
Honey oil.
Launched in 2021, Peaches is a line of cannabis from what Canadian pop star who had a hit in 2021, a single by the same name? Peaches.
Justin Bieber.
Yes. How did you know that, you old fart?
Well, there's not that many Canadian pop stars. I forgot that he's Canadian.
In the last
Guys,
one.
I haven't told you this, but I'm a big Bieber
You're a
head.
big Bieber head.
You like the Biebs? All
I
right.
like the Biebs. I
for
wear
you.
my hair like that at night before I go to bed.
All right. Do
All
a
right,
funny
and
little
last
dance.
but not least, Danny Danko, a friend of the show. He was on our show.
He was on our show.
Danny Danko is a senior cultivator editor of What Monthly Cannabis Issue magazine that got its seed funding from 1970s cannabis sales. What magazine did Danny Danko work
Should we
for?
do it in unison,
Yes.
Phil? 1, 2, 3.
High times.
Yeah.
Well, folks, we're awfully glad you joined us today. You know, if you believe the same things we do when it comes to weed, it really does help if you like, follow, and share.
You can join the Vote Pro Pot party simply by following and sharing our Vote Pro Podcast, whether it be on YouTube, Rumble, or all forms of social media.
Be sure to tune in next week when our resident chef extraordinaire, Andrew McGreedy's, is going to talk about cooking with cannabis. When it comes time to cast your ballot, don't forget to vote pro pot.